So what then happens when UPC finds itself in a, call it a legal limbo, in light of the challenges that have befallen them as a party? Listen, first of all, we are aware of what transpired on July 18th, 2025. There was a ruling to the effect that Honorable Akena was illegitimate and no longer eligible to stand as the party's president. Why? Because the constitution of UPC gives the mandate for only 2 terms, subject to if, for example, the president won the national presidency. So we look at Akena, who has served his 2 terms but did not win the presidency, the national presidency, and therefore he is limited by virtue of the constitution within the party structure of UPC, that is Uganda People's Congress. So that was pronounced on 18th July. Now, come 25th of July, there is now an anticipated injunction that is given in lieu of stopping the UPC delegates conference. But what happens on 25th, this is actually breached because of the fact that UPC now calls a delegate conference organized by the sitting president, who happens to be the Honorable Akena Jimmy, and they go ahead and change all those constitutional challenges within the party structures, and now they grant Honorable Akena an extension of 12 months in terms of preparing himself for sitting or for standing for the next presidential candidate for the Uganda People's Congress. So we see two substantive legal provisions of the land in terms of court pronunciations, which UPC as a structure in this represented by Akena, that have been substantially breached. Number one, in light of 18th July, where there was a ruling saying you are not eligible, and in light of the injunction that was issued on 25th. Then come 26th, they hold a delegate conference. And this injunction was issued because there was a matter that's supposed to be heard on 29th. Now, they did not wait for that matter. They went ahead and held a delegates conference on 26th. What happens on 26th? They now elect him and give him a mandate. They do amendments in light of the constitution of UPC so that they can harmonize and let him be the next candidate. Unfortunately, we have a dilemma. The dilemma is this: what then does the Electoral Commission do? Does the Electoral Commission accept Honorable Jimmy Akena's nomination and say, okay, we can now nominate you as a presidential candidate come 2026? The dilemma also is clearly envisaged under the fact that this matter had not been determined, because it was supposed to be determined on 29th July. So because the matter has substantially been overtaken by events, in a sense that a pronunciation by an act has been taken by the UPC structure, the matter becomes nugatory in a way, because at that point, UPC has now said, okay, we have amended and we have another individual who is going to, take us ahead to 2026 in terms of the presidential elections. But whatever is being done at this point, you should be aware that it is being done under the fact that there was already a High Court pronouncement. There is also an interim injunction that had barred this individual from taking on the party structures in that category. And so, in light of Article 2 of the Ugandan Constitution, which says any other law that is inconsistent with the grand norm is null and void to the extent of that inconsistency, we can argue at this point that these actions do not make an already bad wrong, because already court has pronounced that, wait a minute, you are not eligible. And it has gone ahead and issued an interim injunction and said, do not hold the conference in that category. But what happens? They go ahead in breach of these particular legal provisions, and they hold the delegates conference, which was well attended, 800, we're told, virtual and non-virtual. But the point is, they are doing this under the fact that already the court of Uganda, which has original jurisdiction, and as I said, which enjoys, the fact that it is supreme to every other law that is, in a sense that it is a high court, and also to the extent that whatever happens, as I said, should be subjected to the grand law. So at this material time, we find UpC in kind of a legal limbo, if you like. What options does UpC have? Number one, UpC has to go ahead, first of all, and follow what the law has said. And in terms of this, what does High Court say? The High Court is saying, Mr. Akena Jimmy, you are not eligible at this point. The interim injunction is saying, please do not go ahead. So why don't we redress that point? The first thing they need to do is to, first of all, liaise with the court structures in a sense that they should oblige what the law says, but also make substantive amendments to what would be the right procedure guidelines in light of their own constitution within the party structures. This is not to say that they cannot undo whatever is wrong within their party structures. They can hold a delegates conference, perhaps in this particular position by an entity or an individual who the law has not barred in terms of holding that constitutional, mandate as enjoyed by the UpC structure. The Electoral Commission, for example, within the UpC structure can do that, or perhaps they can nominate an individual to do that, and then they call for a delegates conference, and then they elect or even they amend what they did can now be done within this rightful, legal formalism, if you like. And after that, then they can do those changes and say, okay, we are interested in candidate B, and this candidate, the law had stopped him, but we have amended these particular laws within our party structures, and now we can now make him eligible. Those are the procedural guidelines that should have been followed in light of this, call it legal limbo, that UpC finds itself in as of today. When that is done, then the Electoral Commission will say, okay, we know that you have abided by, first of all, the supreme law, the grand norm. You have abided by the constitution. There is no constitutional breach anymore in terms of the constitution of Uganda, but also in terms of the High Court, that pronouncement, and in terms of the interim injunction that has been issued. Those have been corrected. Now you can go ahead and furnish whoever you want in light of that elected individual. So UpC at this point finds itself in a disturbing dilemma. Ochieno, on the other hand, Mr. Ochieno, has filed that interim injunction because he finds himself eligible together with likes of Senior Counsel Walubiri and other people. And they're saying we are viable individuals. We can stand for this. This is not a question of what? Of family, hereditary, rule, if you like. It is a question of who is the best candidate to take us ahead, to take us up front. We all know what happened in light of call it a marriage of convenience between UpC and the NRM. NRM, on the other hand, has enjoyed a lot of monopoly in the sense that every other party that seems to be substantively in opposition is either usurped or is either compromised. UpC, for a record, we know that Honorable Akena has been one of those individuals who has actually worked very closely now with the NRM government, including his wife. And we're not saying that there's everything wrong with that. But you see, it is clear enough that the opposition, whether you call it UpC, whether you call it FDC, whether you call it NUP, in many, many cases finds itself usurped by this big brother called NRM. And whether you want to call it a marriage of convenience, UpC is very good at playing marriage of convenience. Some of you remember constitutional history when UpC, for example, had an alliance with Kabaka Yeka and was able to topple DP and then became the first, republic in terms of the constitutional mandate that was given to His Excellency Dr. Apollo Milton Obote. We know that came out very clearly. So who knows? But we are sure that whether it's a marriage of convenience, you can be sure that this marriage has to be consummated in terms of consummation of a marriage. But this consummation is likely to give birth to stillbirth or perhaps to give birth to no birth in a sense that there's an abortion that took place, because you know very well that the UpC structures as they stand today, they are weak, probably non-existent. If you ask any strong opposition party that has substantive, strong political forces entrenched within the local people or within the grassroots people, you will find that NRM beats any other party in that context. So you could call it a marriage of convenience, and the fact that Honorable Akena is probably picking these forms is perhaps an attempt to consummate this marriage, but this consummated marriage that is potentially polygamous in a sense that it has many elements of people who now rising up in terms of standing as presidential candidates. Talk about the likes of Dr. Kizza Besigye, talk about the likes of Honorable Mukasa, or any other individual if you like. All these individuals have this tendency of coming up, but perhaps they're struggling for the bigger bread. So true opposition in Mugambe becomes a question of what? Debate. We know for a fact that this so-called marriage is not likely to ensue any results, and is likely to cause a political abortion in that effect. So if I was UpC, which I am not, I would advise them to first of all follow the law. What does the law say? Number two, after following the law, make sure you amend your constitution within the right procedures as the delegates would actually have done in light of the constitutional amendment provided for within their party structures, but also subject to the grand law as Article 2 gives that limitation in terms of that. So please be careful before you find yourself in more deeper limos. Thank you for your attention. Once again, my name is Isaac Christopher Lubogo. Find our books at lubogo.org and suegeneslawup.com. God bless.